So let's go ahead and pull up this video from TheoryWise, and we'll pop that on real quick while we're starting up the stream. It's this one, the MMO that's in a league of its own. Let me pause the music.
Games are malleable. Like any for-profit medium, they change in response to the zeitgeist. And the zeitgeist for modern MMOs is that of beleaguered capitulation, the collective admittance that innovation...
Right off the bat, the zeitgeist, that's a big word, guys. Anyone want to break that down for me? Let me know.
Has failed. This genre ceases to produce novelty, and that is abundantly clear when we take into consideration its most popular titles, World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV, mirror images in a funhouse. Meanwhile, games like old-school RuneScape, nipping at the heels of, or even more popular than Final Fantasy XIV, are, at a glance, time machines into a bygone era. As a result of this explicit reality, we are fed a genre insecure with its nature, something I have at this point waxed on and on about in my prior essays. This insecurity manifests as a misbegotten philosophy, wherein MMOs contort their bodies in such a way as to break every bone in an effort to fit the image of something they will never be. Approachable, short-form experiences that quote-unquote...
I actually really like TheoryWise's videos, but sometimes I wish he wouldn't use so many big words so that more people can understand them, and it would be a good strategy for him. I'm not trying to like aboba him in his own video because he's doing very well on YouTube, but it will be better for me and probably other people. Like, not everybody understands all these words that he's using, and sometimes if there's too many of them, then you end up losing the context of what he's actually trying to say, and I end up a bit lost. I really wish I understood. I need like a translator just to simplify what he's saying here, because that would just be better for me in a selfish way.
Respect your time. While there are MMOs that claim to do this, they are much less MMOs in the traditional sense, and more so MMOs in the secondary or even tertiary function. Their most sought-after and beloved features are opposed to the genre, not beneficial to it. Instanced content, single-player storylines, arbitrary time gates, shackling players to under-designed systems. And when no time gates exist, just the shallow, festering skeletal corpse of hollow content is splayed out for all to see. And this is often excused as good, because for a paltry $15 a month, you can pay to log out when the game demands. So what does all of this look like in practice? Well, what genres are currently popular, and how are modern MMOs trying and failing to match those expectations? The irony is that historically, MMOs are the progenitors of live service games. And those studios which began to ape this live service function took over MMOs in popularity through short-form content delivery mechanisms, allowing aspiring players to hop in at a moment's notice without requiring a huge pre-existing time investment. This is the seasonal architecture. And now MMOs are aping that. They are mimicking functions that were born from mimicking them, a perverted game of telephone wherein every time this function is replicated, it becomes less and less functional. And this is of course even more damaging in the skin of a massively multiplayer online game. Shifting an ever-evolving game world into a seasonal paradigm is questionable at best because it seeks to eliminate or what he's trying to say here is that like retail WoW is a product of its environment, and it continues to make a seasonal MMO just over and over to cater to casual people that don't want to feel like they're falling behind. And in a way, it's not good. The system is not good. I believe that's what he's trying to say here. Or at least grind down the most recognizable and important features of the genre. If you are interested in an extended analysis of the subject, stick around. If you want to watch my unfiltered experience within the recent seasonal old-school RuneScape game mode, then you can find that in the description or on my channel, because a solid portion of this video will be discussing different games in relation to the concept of seasonal game modes prior to breaking down RuneScape's own incarnation. Seasonal game modes have always interested me, especially in MMOs, because they are seemingly so antithetical to the genre, yet they are...
Yeah, I actually wonder why people like these like leagues so much. and it gets so much hype. When an MMO, like when we're playing a horizontal, forever driven MMO where our progress is supposed to matter. And so to take a break from your character and go play a temporary mode where everything you do will be lost, that's like counter to the reason that we play old school RuneScape. I have thought about that before, about why people enjoy it so much.
We are the primary directive. If we are to look at World of Warcraft, we can immediately...
I guess you really just do it for the rewards. Otherwise, people wouldn't play. Yo, type a 1 in the chat right now. If you only... hold on a second. How do I say this? Type a 1. No, don't type a 1 yet. I didn't say why. Okay, now let me not do the 1 thing, because then people will just type 1 for no reason. If there were no rewards in leagues, would you play? Yes or no? It's like 50-50. It's like 50-50. Unless I wanted to learn Inferno or Call or something, but then I would do it on there. Gridmaster rewards were shit, but that was fun. A lot of people that said no didn't play anyways. Some people just don't play leagues at all. I really think the key, the reason we play video games is for fun at the core of it. But some people need a motivator to have fun. Some people need something there, the carrot on the stick, the thing to go after, so that they can justify that they're having fun. Or they might not even be having fun. They're just like, I need that reward. They're going to do whatever it takes to get it. Yeah. All right, well, let's see what Theorywise has to say about the temporary game modes.
We understand the appeal.
We must answer.
So much chaos and destruction.
An expansion releases, and over the course...
You guys realize that retail WoW is a temporary game mode that just resets every 5 to 6 months. It's like a permanently resetting game mode. It's like it's a fresh retail every 6 months. New raid, start over with the gear.
Course of 2 years, now just under 2 years, receives around 3 large updates and a host of intermediary, smaller patches. Each one of these large main updates acts as a soft reset to the entire concurrent system. Everyone...
I would say it's almost a hard reset, because your old gear, you can't clear any of the content in the old gear. It is almost a fresh. Like, the only thing that doesn't reset is your mounts and achievements and titles that you've earned on that character. So that's the true end game of retail WoW, is mounts, achievements, and titles.
Regardless of where they ended the prior patch, whether that be
it's
at
the only
the
thing
peak
that lasts
of their
forever.
power or newly leveled, gets to experience immediate power growth in the form of catch-up systems meant to replicate the feeling of progression over the course of a weekend. All of the previously earned rewards are devalued in favor of repeating the cycle, reigniting the addictive flame of chasing the next upgrade. And this comes in the form of the same kinds of engagement archetypes: raids, dungeons, overworld slop, and perhaps, if the players are so lucky, a small novel system that gets forgotten about in the next main update. This is a conscious form of development. It's not a mistake that the game operates in 6-month increments. The intent is to make it approachable. If you are a returning World of Warcraft player or just aspiring to download the game, you really don't have to wait long to start fresh alongside your peers. The only thing you lack is game knowledge, but time investment from a character-driven perspective is a thing of the past. And all of this is known, or at least felt, by the players. That's what makes seasonal game modes so interesting. The knowledge that everything other than paltry and forgettable cosmetics are utterly lost after the increment winds down. This loss is of course theoretical in some cases, as you don't literally lose the gear on your character, but its purpose is muted by the new power scale introduced. This simplistic cycle seems to be perfect for theme park MMOs, since this kind of subgenre is already simple. It's a closed loop that takes place in what is often a very small sliver of a much larger world, rendered relevant by it being the newest content, and rendered irrelevant when a newer piece of content is introduced. Yet, I always felt disconnected to it. I played World of Warcraft for many years, at a high level no less, and have played or at least tried to play about every other MMO that's currently popular, and at every turn this seasonal structure, while perhaps addicting for a week, is also missing things that I never really considered until I finally gave up on it. I, surprisingly, actually want to keep the shit I've earned. It's my shit. Let me have it, and let it actually be of value. These emotions all came to a head.
Guys, I think Discord is broken right now. If you're trying to get in the Discord, sorry if some of you guys are messaging me right now. I actually think it's a Discord problem, not anything we can do. Discord's also lagging. I can't even type messages to anybody right now, so try again in an hour, okay?
Head when I quit and started playing old school RuneScape, a middle-aged awakening of sorts wherein I finally saw the value in a curated sandbox MMO. The features of permanence imbued so much worth in my experience and allowed the game to ask more of my time without my time ever feeling particularly infringed upon. That's the joy of actually having agency and not having my progress diminish every half year. Now, cue my surprise when I hear about leagues. For those who don't know, Leagues is a seasonal game mode, a fresh start for all paying members of the game, where they can create new characters and play old school RuneScape again, but with a twist. There have been 5 iterations of this game mode so far, releasing every year or two, with each one introducing a more expansive and unique shift in playstyle and an explosive bump in player count. What started as a game mode where every player gains expedited experience and drop rates locked to the at the time newest continent became so much more. Now, in its 5th incarnation, League's Raging Echoes, we see Jagex for the first time take on a more additive approach for this game mode, using their pre-existing.
Why do you guys think that Leagues get such a big bump in player base? Why do people get so excited for a temporary game mode when old school RuneScape is totally against the temporary philosophy of an MMO? It's the grindiest long-term MMO that rewards your time that you put in with permanent progress. In Leagues, you're losing everything. Everything you do in Leagues is lost, besides maybe the reward. Everyone loves starting over and reliving the early game. Burned out players that come back, new goals, the rewards. Oh, I'm already a max GM, so there's not much to do in the game. I think Leagues is very good for players who are towards the end of their journey, or for players who have never done the journey, because they know how much time it takes and they don't want to commit their lives to the full thing. So if you're one of those two people, either you've put in no time or you've put in too much time, I think Leagues is very good for you. But for the people that are in the middle, it's interesting. I'm kind of in the middle. I didn't want to take too much time away from my Iron Man because I still have so many goals that I want to do and it requires so much time, and I knew that I didn't care too much about the League's rewards. I just wanted to pop in and have fun, maybe take a quick little vacation. I viewed it as a little vacation from the real game. But even then, I was still AFKing because I actually didn't want to take it. I still wanted to work on vacation. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't want to not be making progress on my main character while I played Leagues. It's not that deep. I think it's just fun to play together with a lot of people. So, hype. That is what you're saying. Hype is why people are playing. They want to play with a bunch of other people who are all starting at the same place at the same time and running after a goal. Hype is huge for MMOs. It is what drives most people to play in the beginning, and then hype always falls off after a few weeks. You can't have hype forever, unfortunately. You can't bottle it and keep it. It's just that that hype being in the same place at the same time with everybody who's excited to just go from afresh is the best feeling ever playing any game I've ever played. WoW fresh launches have always been the most fun for me. The server is the server thing is questionable. The stability of the servers has always been questionable, but the hype around it has always been so much fun. I think it's fun to try content when you haven't before at a very little time cost. Yeah, so that's why if you haven't ever played the game or if you're replaying the game again, I see the value there. So really, it's really the hype is what motivates a lot of other people who are in the middle to play too. Okay, we got down to the bottom of that.
Understanding of curated sandbox systems and applying that iterative design to this limited time game mode. This was done by using the blueprint for the prior league, Trailblazer, which saw players pick up to 3 regions to unlock within the game alongside a talent tree system in the form of relic powers, granting players large boons as they progress. But Jagex didn't just run it back, they implemented a host of larger, more game-changing alterations. Combat masteries, for example, a separate talent tree for combat specialization, granting players an awe-inspiring amount of power while also allowing them to utilize new and old relics from prior leagues as well. They also implemented echo versions of certain bosses, 1 per region. Each echo fight was either sporting new mechanics or was fundamentally reworked from the ground up, as well as having a chance to drop new and bespoke items that granted more power than just about anything else. These additions were at once transformative and telling. Jagex, understanding the success of the prior league, doubled down in an effort to translate a surprise success into a runaway one. But why does it work? What about League's works as compared to, say, World of Warcraft? Both are limited time, short form, and exceedingly flitting. But only one is growing. The only way I was going to find out was by playing. And play I did, a lot, actually. My group Iron Man partner and I decided to jump into leagues without guides in an effort to fully enrapture ourselves in the systems that are so highly regarded by the fans of old school RuneScape. And what we discovered was a deeply addicting, understandably flawed, and incredibly transformative experience. The success of leagues is as much dependent on understanding the context of old school RuneScape and its systems as it is on simply being fun to play. But I'm getting ahead of myself. RuneScape, after all, isn't the only MMO doing this. And I don't just mean in the half-related tangential sense I was describing with World of Warcraft. No, Blizzard has...
No, Blizzard does remixes. They did Mists of Pandaria and Legion remix, which might have taken inspiration from Jagex's leagues, I'm not sure. But it's a temporary game mode where you earn rewards like cosmetics and transmog items that are limited time, and you won't really ever be able to go back and get them, to my knowledge. So the FOMO of these limited time items is really what probably drives a lot of people to go and play it.
Outright done this, using both its modern retail client as well as its...
Or if you just never got to play the old expansion. I mean, maybe people just want to go back and see what Legion or MOP was like, you know?
Old school classic version. Last year, Retail WoW saw Mists of Pandaria Remix, a mode that is undeniably inspired by old school RuneScape's leagues. In Mists of Pandaria Remix, players found themselves locked to a continent of a prior expansion with expedited experience rates, somewhat unique drops, and an endless power scale. Classic WoW, which is an earlier incarnation of World of Warcraft running on a recreation of the systems present in 2006.
Yeah, it's in leagues you can just play the next league and then you could go buy old rewards. You can't do that in the remixes of World of Warcraft. You can only get rewards that they offer from that remix experience. You can't play one remix and then get the remixes. You can't play Legion remix and get stuff from MOP remix.
Also saw the Season of Discovery release, a version of Classic that had subscribers play through the game in level increments as the developers capped the maximum level every patch and released a small raid created using assets from pre-existing dungeons. Alongside this, to expand on the discovery in its name, they implemented a rune system, adding unlockable runes that grant player power.
Guys, you might... This is going to be a hot take. super hot take here. I know a lot of you guys are not going to like it, but I don't like the ability to go back and get like old items. I think that if in World of Warcraft specifically, like if I have a mount that from an expansion that's no longer in the game, I don't want people to be able to go back and get that mount. I like the exclusivity that I was there, I played it, I earned that mount when it was available. And I don't think anyone should ever be able to go back and get it now that it's not available anymore. Because that makes my account have that rare thing, like that. It just shows like I was there. I played that, I earned that, I was there. I love that. And so I think that it's just like imagine in like RuneScape 3 if they just like started dropping blue party hats again. I would hate that. I would not like that. If you have a party hat from back in the day or something, like that should be a rare thing. Like that makes your account rare. It shows that maybe I have bunny ears on my RuneScape account. They haven't dropped those in 23 years or whatever. So that makes my account feel super cool, and I love that. I mean, I don't even want to play RuneScape 3, but sometimes it's like, hey, at least I have that one item that shows like I played all those years ago, you know, and I love that.
As abilities and passives that can be discovered through a host of different methods, from secrets to quests to just killing bosses, somewhat similar to League's 3 in RuneScape called Shattered Relics. The reason I'm placing these two versions of seasonal game modes side by side is because Blizzard, in all of its creativity, has unintentionally just created or recreated the retail version of World of Warcraft, the one I spent a little bit of time explaining at the beginning of the video, and they recreated it again and again and again. So to understand what sets RuneScape apart from these games, we first need to analyze what these games do, and unfortunately releasing a short-form seasonal piece of content for a short-form seasonal game doesn't make much sense. You're essentially just making the same game, except now it's a little less begotten to competitive balance, balance being an explicit flaw of retail WoW, not due to a lack of it, but rather due to Blizzard's incessant need to overbalance. They put themselves in the confounding position of needing to hyperfixate on balancing an MMORPG to support its high level of competitive difficulty imposed by them, and as a result removing all of the fun and uniqueness out of the game's progression systems. This manifests as simplistic, homogenized systems with identical stat blocks, a sauceless trinket system that somehow makes unique, on-use items feel weak and samey, and of course, a general disregard for gearing and itemization as a whole. Thankfully, that doesn't all apply to Pandaria Remix, at least not conceptually.
Yeah, retail gearing sucks. Doesn't feel great to get an item. You just get a number upgrade. It's kind of sad. There's no item identity anymore. It's gone. I mean, how can there be? They have to put out 500 new items every 6 months. Can you imagine if you're an item designer for World of Warcraft and you're just like, all right, let's just take this item, change the color on it, and give it a higher number, and then you just shift it over here, copy paste, and put like some horns on it. Like that's literally what the artists are doing at Blizzard. You know what I mean? It's like the same recopied stuff, and it just feels terrible. Like, you know how sick it feels to get an Infernal Cape? You will never feel that feeling in retail WoW. You won't care about any. You won't remember the name of any of your items. Maybe you might remember a trinket or a crazy weapon that you got, but it won't last long. It's only good for a few months.
Conceptually, a version of retail WoW that was thankfully less concerned with balance and more concerned with power progression. This was mainly done through the use of infinite power scaling on rather boring items. Season of Discovery, however, is a much more curious failure, and I want to use that word carefully because it's not a bad game. There are people who swear by it. The discussion is what fascinates me.
Failure as in no one plays it anymore. But a lot of people played it at the time, and I think it was a lot of hope. people were hoping that it would be kind of like what they wanted Classic Plus to be, but it ended up falling short because it just felt like it felt like they did too much and not enough at the same time. They did too much with the class design. In my opinion, like the rogue tanking and warlock tanking and stuff was a bit too far-fetched for Classic. But then they didn't do enough changes to the actual world. And then they time gated the content, so you're just stuck at level 20 or level 25 and 40 for months and months at a time. And all there was to do was just like level 10 characters. So I think it could have been better if they just released it all at one time. There wasn't as many crazy things to do, and instead of just kind of copy pasting what's already there, they try to add more new things to the game, which is kind of what we hope Classic Plus is going to be. But with their, we have our doubts because of the limited development team that they have. So Classic Plus is a whole nother thing.
Classic WoW on the surface is begging for this kind of content. In addition, Blizzard is all too content in re-releasing the game over and over again. So upon seeing this Season of Discovery, I, alongside others, was surprised. New content? Blizzard? That's shocking. While I wasn't in the camp expecting it to become a Classic Plus, a pipe dream for Stockholm Classic WoW players who think Blizzard will hire 100-odd developers to expand on.
Classic Plus isn't coming out. Tuna Sandwich, 5 subs if it's not. Me versus you. You want to bet? You want to bet 5 subs that Classic Plus is coming out? I'll bet you right now. I'll drop 5 if it doesn't, though.
The pre-existing Classic game, I was at least intrigued by where it could go in theory wise. Classic Plus was the core of the discussion, and one I will not delve too deeply into here because it likely deserves its own video, but judging by the direction taken in Season of Discovery, whatever Classic Plus could be or would be is nowhere near what Classic WoW is or should be. Season of Discovery, or SOD, capitalized on a single intelligent observation by the small development team tasked with creating it. The classic beta from half a decade ago, where thousands of players got to play Classic WoW before its release in 2019 up to a limited level cap, was engaged in a rather unique way. What happened was a host of large content creators created their own content, braved their own challenges, and explored a world alongside their fans in an emergent way. They didn't just rush to max level and then do the simple raids and dungeons. They made their own
Sony Digital right there
to level 30, enormous PvP battles, taking 40-odd players to fight.
This is what classic people, classic players, content creators, everyone wants to do, is like these large battles, you know. They want to see, like, you know, Czar versus Savix and Shobek versus Graves for Days, you know, and everybody brings their followers, and they all go and have a fight in the middle of wherever, you know, but the servers just can't handle it. There's layering, and the servers and it's laggy, and it's sad because it's a cool idea for events, but it just pushes the game beyond what it's capable of. And every time I see these guys try to do a large battle, it's just a lag fest, and then people end up dying instantly. And so that kind of sucks. It could be a really fun thing, but you got to realize there's limitations with the game. But all this stuff, it looks fun, but it looks fun and sounds fun on paper, but it's usually not. You're like, you can't even play your character, and then you're dead.
Some random high-level elite, and so on. With that in mind, the SOD developers stitched together a similar concept. What if patches evolving this Season of Discovery would start at level 20 rather than level 60, the original max level? What if at level 20, players can band together and face a new challenge? Again, on its surface,
this was a unique idea that they were trying to like bring raiding earlier in the game, because the raiding experience is what people are all rushing to. So they're like, what if we slowed people down, made them stay at a certain level, and then gave them new raids in the existing dungeons that were already there? And so it was a decent idea on paper, but it doesn't really work once the full game is out, because no one is going to really get a 10-man together and go raid. They're going to just skip that and go straight to max level if there's a faster way. Unless the raids were like the fastest way to level, then maybe you could incentivize it through that. But for the most part, what I saw was people just skipping over those leveling up raids and not even going to them anymore. Yo, Glowy, thank you for the 7 months.
This is awesome. Unfortunately, and perhaps expectedly, it wasn't, and that was clear almost immediately as I discovered after obtaining my very first rune, giving my character an ability from a future expansion. In fact, most runes are just abilities and passives from future expansions. So what you end up getting is a version of a...
Yeah, and then people didn't want to... Then people were made in alts, and then they didn't want to go unlock all the runes again, and then they just added a rune vendor. And eventually you're just like, all right, you start a character, you go to the rune vendor, you just buy all your abilities. That's kind of what it ended up being.
Specialization that resembles something that
nobody wanted to season of discover their abilities anymore after a while.
Already exists. What's to discover about that? Admittedly, there are more unique options such as a mage healer, but those are few and far between. Even more damning, this was far from the main issue. What WoW developers have been trained to do for years now is to create a very specific kind of content, instanced content, raids, dungeons, battlegrounds. Gone are the days where the overworld takes precedent over that, because those days were almost exclusively...
How long did SOD last? SOD lasted about a year because they time gated every single every time you'd gain like 10 or 15 more levels, they time gated that out for 3 months at a time. So the full game took nearly 9 to 10 months to release. And then they did one more raid at the very end. And then they time gated the raids, and then they added one raid at the very end. By the very end, they finally got it right. I swear, the Scarlet Enclave was fun. It was about a year and a half long of Season of Discovery, and then once like 2 to 3 weeks after the last raid was released and people started clearing it, that was it. It was done because they gave you so much loot. Like you got geared extremely fast, like maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and you were done. And then there was nothing else to do. And then they announced that there was nothing else coming out for it. And when there's nothing else to look forward to, people don't play. If you have no reason to get the BIS because you don't think something else is coming out that you're going to need that gear for, people lost immediate interest in playing the game. Like, it was overnight. They put out a post saying SOD is not getting any more content. Boom, everyone quit the next day. It was crazy.
Before vanilla WoW even launched in 2004. Most of the developers who created the world that so many players fondly remember and still to this day fondly experience are no longer influences of the game.
I don't think WoW will ever not be time gated. I don't think so either. And I think the reason is because they need too large of a team in order for it to be profitable enough to run the company, because they have to design the game for 8 different classes. Whereas RuneScape can survive with a much smaller team. They don't have to design as many items because it's horizontal progression. They very, very easily, like, slowly power creep their items. And it's just so much easier to design new content for RuneScape because it's a simpler game with no classes. And that's why it's just an impossible task to design a game around that many classes. And then retail is even harder, because there's more classes in the game now with more specs. And it's just really tough to design an MMO because people want balance, or they think they want balance, but balance is not achievable. With that many classes, it's just not possible. It's an impossible task.
Therefore, what was given in SOD is a new small raid at level 20. Cool, but not classic. Raids were never the core appeal of classic WoW. Dungeons were never the core appeal of classic WoW. That has never and will never be the most evocative element of the game. It's always been the world. And the fact that the developers releasing the Season of Discovery ended up spending their development time creating linear instanced raids is... well, there is no eloquent way to express how bizarre and disconnected this choice was. The leveling experience is the meat and content of classic WoW.
Yeah.
The endgame is a host of incredible emergent systems intertwined with mundane instanced content. That content only succeeds on the back of interpersonal, emergent experiences, running out to get your world buffs, the loot drama, the cross-guild or cross-faction collusion, the backstabbing and management of 40-odd players in a single raid. That becomes the endgame of Classic, not Molten Core again. Foregoing all...
I loved in Star Wars Galaxies how you could go to any class at the expense of all your XP. I love that too. I love that game design in an MMO. You're just a guy and you start off and you have a certain amount of talent points to pick and put into whatever class you want to be. And so that created such a dynamic of different classes in the game. It created different metas. Like there were riflemen, Terrakasi, which is unarmed. There were riflemen, unarmed guys who went points in doctor so they could heal themselves in battle. And so you had like riflemen, Terrakasi doctors, and then you had like people that knocking people down, like CCing them was a big thing. So people wanted to always be able to knock down, and so you could have like polearm could do leg sweeps. So you could have like a polearm guy who also went into combat medic, so he could fight in open world. Combat medics were really good in doing mass damage in open world fights. And so you had just like you'd have like a polearm combat medic, and then you'd have literally, you could have a carbine guy who's good at like close range combat, or a pistolier, like pistolier Terrakasi were really good too. Like there were so many different combinations of classes you could put together. And that's why I think Star Wars Galaxies was just so ahead of its time, bro. I love that particular game design, probably the most out of every MMO I've played. The ability, everyone starts off as just a guy. And then, dude, there were people that would just sit in the cantina and dance all day for tips, like, or doctors that would just sit in the city and buff people all day. Like, you didn't have to do combat if you didn't want to. You had to choose to put points into combat if that's what you wanted to do. It was a really good MMO.
All of that in favor of a level 20 dungeon made a raid is, well, it's as if they hired plumbers to perform a colonoscopy. You end up with confusion and a lot of shit. I don't want to devalue the hard work of these developers or even attribute negative intentions. The new raids aren't bad when compared to other classic raids, and I truly believe...
Sorry, Mega. Doom is rough, bro. You got to just keep sending. You got to just keep getting better and better. You try Doom. Try using my tiles or watching my VOD from yesterday and see if that can help at all. Yo, Shiramar, 30 months, bro. You getting hyped for Classic Plus? They give it a 30-monther. Dude, I am so excited. I am on the copium, the hopium and the copium for Classic Plus. Although I'm a bit pessimistic, I'm still on the hopium and the copium, and I will be playing. So hopefully it comes out later this year. I will be there, front row BlizzCon with the boys, and we'll be excited for the announcement. So we'll see what they have going on. What class we going, Sard? Hey, I don't want to talk about it yet. We're going to have to see. We'll be doing some theory crafting. We'll be making some videos on it. And after BlizzCon, we'll probably shift back into World of Warcraft mode when the hype starts happening. Yo, Artmoose. Thank you very much for the 10-monther, Artemus. Holy.
Believe it's what they had the time to do and what they were taught to do. And the players aren't there to even explain this issue either.
Imagine they go classless WoW. There's no way.
There's no way. Fictitious Classic Plus, all players seem to want is more dungeons and raids and perhaps some new endgame zones. Unintentionally just asking for expansions.
Classless WoW would be so sick, though. Oh. Can you imagine, bro? They Star Wars Galaxied it, and you just start off as a guy, and you had to choose which talent points you went into. You had to put points into like melee weapons, and then you would put points into like a warrior tree, but then you also put points into a warlock tree. So you're like a warrior who dots people up, or you're like a warrior priest who can shield himself
in a roundabout sort of way. SOD is just retail WoW with micro expansions. The level cap is bumped up every few months with a new raid awaiting those who rush through the rapid leveling experience and a host of new items that surely devalue those preceding them. In fact, they even expedite the leveling to assist those who want to catch up. Catch up to what? One raid? mustard? I struggle to understand how this is in the spirit of a game that evokes its world and therefore what one does within it, and what that world begets in the original vanilla or even the classic release is emergent systems. Again, this deserves its own video. What these two attempts at seasonal game modes showcase is both a lack of understanding and perhaps more sadly, an impossibility. Making a seasonal game mode out of a seasonal game is almost paradoxical, and the version that could benefit from something seasonal ended up just becoming that which it sought to avoid. Now, finally, let's look at Leagues. Strangely, Leagues opposes the main version of old-school RuneScape immediately. As I zoned in for the first time, met with hundreds of players, a sense of speed gripped me. I felt, intentionally or not, like I needed to go fast. And if I didn't, I would miss out on something intangible.
I feel that.
This could be as a result of what I was witnessing in front of me, the weeks of
but everybody tries to go fast at the start of an MMO. That's the fun of it, is trying to see how fast you go. Nobody on MMO launch day is like, oh, I'm just going to have so much fun and like look around at stuff and just like kind of see the view and like, you know, take in the scenery. No, everyone's like, yo, I'm going to hit here. We're going to kill this, go here, do this quest, do here. We're going to rush this, watch the foe guide. Going to go here, try to beat this guy here, see if we can beat solo mission. You know what I mean? Which nobody can, except for Pork Hazard. And that's basically what it is. You're trying to go fast, but you're just not as fast as the fastest guy. So it's like, damn it.
Min-max conversations prior to the launch, or just the understanding that this is a limited time game mode. The long-term progression that acts as RuneScape's most defining feature is no longer here. I had 8 weeks to do what I could and not a second more.
I played TBC to rush to 70 and quit 2 weeks later.
Looking back, 8 weeks is more than enough because the progression was multiplicatively increased as you begin to interact with the core mechanic of Leagues, the tasks. If the first thing you do in OSRS upon leaving Tutorial Island is quests, the first thing you do in Leagues is tasks. And
that's interesting though, Shiramar, because I now play World of Warcraft with that mindset. I now play it like a league. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to play for a bit, have some fun, and then quit. Because once I get to raid log, I'm not having fun anymore, so I quit. But like the thought of getting to the raid is fun. So it's like I just play with the knowledge that I'm not going to play one day. And that's kind of where the game is at nowadays. That's the same thing. That's how I play retail WoW. I know I'm gonna level one character. I'm gonna hit max level. I'm gonna push all mythic plus 10s and clear the heroic raid or the normal raid, and then that's it. I have no interest in pushing beyond that anymore. I kind of play retail WoW like it's a league. I also play re-releases now, TBC and Wrath, like it's a league. It's not a forever game. When I stop expecting World of Warcraft to be a forever game, I stopped being disappointed in it and actually just started enjoying it. OSRS is the forever game. It's built to be the forever game. WoW is not.
Synonym, really. These tasks are strangely similar to standard MMO questing. They are singular tiered directives that, upon completion, grant Leagues points, which are like your secondary experience used to unlock regions and relics. There is also a second set of tasks that grant the combat masteries as well, but those are essentially account milestones, defeating the area-specific Echo Boss, for example, braving one of the more difficult challenges like the Inferno, and so on. Much like my experience loading into OSRS a year ago, I haplessly meandered for a moment, trying to regain my footing. But unlike the main game, this was like regaining footing in the middle of a Black Friday stampede. Except in the stead of high-heeled wine moms, it was pink skirt donning gamers. I'm not sure what's worse. There was a level of novel excitement with that. Lumbridge was bustling and chaotic, a serene, nostalgic landscape transformed into a din. My group Ironman partner and I felt enraptured by the speed, even though we were guideless, so we improvised our own meta, involving mistaking regions, misunderstanding tasks, and almost dying in the stronghold of security twice. The process of earning points was incredibly satisfying though, offering bursts of progression, reminding you that you were moments away from a new relic, mastery, item, reward. But of course, this is not without its flaws, one of which is a UI that has, over time, become more and more stuffed with sub-menus leading into more sub-menus. Something I hope will be alleviated with the upcoming integration of an official Jagex client is the use of screen space provided by said client. The pop-out widget-driven section of RuneLite, for example, would be a perfect place to implement certain UI functions that are otherwise a chore to navigate through. The most essential of which is the task menu itself, a new tab placed beside the quests and achievements section of the UI. Upon clicking this menu, a pop-up which covers most of your screen appears, and then you must filter that pop-up to find appropriate tasks for yourself. This is untenable. All the second monitor gamers, such as myself, surely just had a wiki open on the other monitor.
Yeah, bro, we don't use any of the, I don't use any of the in-game stuff in RuneScape. I use the websites that other people make to monitor my progress, and the wiki as well. I use the OSRS wiki to monitor what task I've done. It's just better. There's no other way around it. Once you get all the mega rares, will you still have fun in RuneScape? Yeah, I think so. The thing is there's a development team for RuneScape. They're putting out new content, so there'll always be new content that comes out. But I think once I get to my plan, if I ever get to the end of RuneScape, like the end game of RuneScape, my plan is to play Classic Plus when new content comes out, and then RuneScape when new content comes out, and bounce back and forth between the two games. Because as somebody who plays MMOs 5 days a week, 8 to 10 hours a day, you're going to run out of content eventually. Like, no game is ever going to have that much content. So trying to play one game it's tough for a full-time streamer. So you really have to play at a slower pace in order to not get to that point, especially with WoW. WoW is a much slower game or faster paced game than RuneScape. There's less content. So and then you can always play RuneScape again. Right? You can always play it on a hardcore. You can always do a challenge to do something fun with the community. And what I think I'm looking for as a streamer is the framework to create a fun experience. And RuneScape and also WoW, Classic WoW specifically, has that. They have the framework to create a community, to host events, and to do fun things. And I think that is at the core what I want to do after I get to the end of my first time playing through the game, right? And so that's what I would say about that. In Leagues, you get some rewards you can show off in the main game, but in TBC re-release, you grind, then raid, and then literally get nothing in return. Yeah, believe it or not, people are just playing TBC for the fun of it. They're not expecting to get anything, and that's why I asked people, would they play Leagues if you didn't get anything? And some people said yes, and some people said no. I think people would probably quit faster because they'd be like, oh, I'm not having too much fun anymore. I'm not going to get anything from this, so I don't want to waste any more time, right? But some people get to that point and they're like, nope, I don't care if I'm not having fun. I have to keep playing because there's that reward that I need. And a lot of people get to that point in Leagues too. So there's good and bad, pros and cons with both. But yeah.
But that in and of itself is also untenable. It's an unclean solution leveraging a community's commitment to creating the best wiki of any game ever to alleviate a problem inherent to the UI. I hope to see this remedied with the official Jagex client. Give us the opportunity to sort, track, and filter tasks in a widget-driven system like RuneLite has. Why not? A trend of issues with Leagues generally manifest as a simple user experience problem, which is why Leagues, to me, is almost shockingly popular. The player count surges, new and returning players join the choir of eager taskers, but Leagues is an unbelievably unfriendly experience to new players. It's confusing, offering even less guidance than the main game does, and creating strange points of unintuitive design that already familiar players will never even encounter. Thankfully, that's why I'm here. One of the earliest issues encountered was the X marks the spot quest, a very early game quest granting a small experience lamp as a reward, an obvious goal to do in leagues. But you can't do it. You can start it, but you can't complete it, as it requires a different region than those which you have access to in the beginning. There is no mention of this anywhere in the game. You are just kind of expected to know that. You can't even sort by region when looking at completed or...
Yeah, I guess you just find out the hard way a lot of things on leagues. They allow you to start every quest, but not finish every quest.
Completable quests. You are just expected to know that. This problem, once again, can be fixed with more consideration in designing the UX. Why give the option to start quests that aren't even completable?
That would be kind of cool if they just
for those min-maxing their
didn't allow you to start it.
If so, then why not implement a warning that this quest requires a different region to even complete? Don't get me wrong, these are small problems and only encountered by new players who aren't glued to their second monitor following a guide, but alleviating them nonetheless creates more incentive to not follow a guide, to blaze your own trail and be the architect of your own mistakes. Fun aside, it's a core reason why Leagues truly isn't a new player-friendly recruitment tool. It is likely to push more new players away than it isn't. What we see in new player engagement is as a result of hype that can otherwise be generated with other forms of content, rather than a game mode that may confuse more than it doesn't. That's not to say a new player can't wrangle it, but pre-existing knowledge to me is borderline paramount for enjoyment. Thankfully, enjoyment is at the forefront when this knowledge exists. Leagues is just so fun, and that is where I can honestly end the video. It's so fun, in fact, that I maxed my stats. So fun that I played it twice. Once on my main Group Ironman account and another time on a different account to experience new regions and a new build. There is a level of intelligent design present that once again elevates old-school RuneScape's development team handedly above others in the MMO space. They are tasked with balancing a complicated, deep world and implementing systems on top of pre-existing ones in a way to enhance rather than diminish. It would be very easy to overshadow existing content by rushing players through it. Instead, Leagues emphasizes that content. Inferior design would see a flood of resources to alleviate troubles with, say, herblore and farming, or mining and smithing. What if every enemy dropped 50 noted Raynars because prayer pots can slow the rush to endgame? But instead, these hurdles remain because that is what breeds innovative gameplay and this kind of emphasized content, and that is most prevalent with the new Echo bosses. These enhanced encounters are unlocked through killing the normal versions a few times and receiving an Echo Orb, which, when held, can be used to unlock a private instanced version of that encounter. This version of the fight has reworked mechanics to provide a bigger challenge. But Echo Fights did so much more than just provide that. Again, there is a level of intelligent design here that is easy to appreciate. My first encounter was the Grotesque Guardians in the Mauritania region. My second region unlocked since my first one, Varlamore, featured the most difficult Echo boss, so I avoided it for the time being. Grotesque Guardians are an old Slayer boss, meaning that they are, at best, somewhat boring and at worst, about what one expects from an old Slayer boss. Grinding out the first kills on the normal versions wasn't particularly fun because my melee-centric build performed great on the melee boss, but the moment I swapped to range, I was back playing the main game. Slow, inaccurate attacks, and an overall arduous experience. To be frank, I was nervous for the Echo version, not just the difficulty, but what the lack of range strength could mean for my experience. But I really shouldn't have doubted this team, because the Echo boss opened the fight up rather than honing in on its most frustrating elements. The main gargoyle is at the center, the melee version, flanked by two other gargoyles which can be killed separately for a slower, safer fight, or ignored for a more difficult and quick fight. I, not knowing this, focused only the main gargoyle. What was immediately clear to me was that the changes made are in an effort to make a more intuitive encounter out of this rather old and outdated experience. Suddenly, the telegraphs made more sense, like the falling rocks on the fight now striking one tile like they're...
Would you guys ever want to see any of these Echo bosses added into the main game as an option? Like you could do a harder boss kind of like more awakened versions of bosses that maybe just dropped a higher chance of you getting something. Like, imagine CG, you could loot a orb, echo orb from CG, and then you could kill him on echo version and skip the prep for one of your kills, and it has a higher chance of dropping a seed. Nah, keep it to League. Not every boss needs an awakened version. Specifically, CG, I think, needs one. Because a lot of people quit because the grind is, it's the same thing over and over, and the level of grind that CG requires might be too early into the game, and it's kind of would scare some people away. But maybe if they could accelerate it in some way, as long as it took more skill, I think it could be good. I would like that at least. I like the Doom level design where if you push deeper and deeper, you have a higher chance of getting stuff. And I just want more stuff like that in the game. Hopefully that's the way they go in the future, because I think it's the best way. Because right now, the only way you can get loot faster is to do it faster. Like, do tier 1 prep, try to kill the boss as quick as you can. And that's your way of getting loot faster. You just maybe shave 30 seconds, a minute off your time. You do that for 500 runs, and now you've just saved yourself a few hours, right? But if you could just do a harder version of the boss that had a slightly higher chance of dropping, that would be fun. It would be fun to like increase your skill level even more and get a chance at loot from doing a harder boss. And I think as long as it is harder, it's okay to have a higher drop chance. I like that type of game design. I would like to see that for CG specifically.
Their shadow actually indicates, rather than the surrounding tiles as well, like in the main encounter. Damage can now actually be avoided, rather than it being an unavoidable byproduct of the final phase, with most of the skill expression of this Echo variant being around maximizing uptime on the main gargoyle while avoiding all the surrounding AoE. It was hectic, but so fun, and at no point did it require me to switch to my rather weak range setup. Best of all, this encounter was faster as well. What ended up happening is that an old encounter was just made better. It was faster, more intuitive, the mechanics were clearer and more concise, and the pace was much more engaging. And while I truly love the grotesque guardians in their Echo variant, this positive change to old fights was at its true peak in the desert with the Calphite Queen, a region I unlocked on my secret second account. The Calphite Queen was completely transformed from one of the most perfunctory, frustrating, underdone,
what was the Calphite Queen Echo boss like?
Into a modern, fun, early to mid-game fight that demanded attention and precise movement. To say that this was an improvement would be an understatement. It was a rework. But I do fear for the poll, which may eventually ask for this fight to be implemented into the main
step
game,
in, step out.
Because for all of the evolution of the OSRS community, there is still a rigid bastion of players who see a lot of value in preserving terrible, awful, pointless shit for no reason other than it's old and
Echo
makes their
Soul was
nostalgia
amazing.
sparkle when they do it every few years. The current Calphite Queen offers very, very minimal value to the game. It acts as a frustration for those pursuing the elite tasks in the desert and a frustration for those eager to get all their collection logs from the boss. And that's it. There really is no other pleasure in doing the fight. The Echo variant, however, is the opposite, and I hope that Jagex and voting players see this. It's not all sunshine and good design with Echo bosses, however. Ironically, the better fights in the main game suffer more in their Echo variants, the most prominent of which is Echo Soul, the final boss of the Colosseum. The format is great, allowing players to skip the prior waves and just challenge him. But this fight wasn't reworked because it didn't need to be. The main version of Soul is already awesome. As a result, what the Echo version really became is just Soul with more stuff. And on top of that, healing totems spawn all around the arena in increments of health. I hate these healing totems. Not only are their hitboxes really not good, they also break up the pacing of the fight that is all about pacing. Soul is a flow state driven encounter, and the spawning of these totems drags your attention away, creating a secondary distraction that honestly detracts from the encounter itself. I would have much rather seen newer attack combinations to throw players off, or even crazier patterns to avoid. With all that said, much like any RuneScape player, my eyes were set on the prize, in this case, the Echo items. These are unique items which drop from individual bosses, opening up new and alternative pathways to dealing tons of damage. My personal favorite actually coming from Soul himself, as you are now able to wield his spear and shield combo and gain one of the coolest special attacks in the entire game, a weapon that I genuinely miss in the main game. These items were by and large hits. I hope that in future leagues they continue to expand on the Echo bosses in each region, as well as adding new Echo bosses in the first regions as well. The coolest element of combat in leagues was actually the utilization of new items, with only the jewelry from the Dagonoth Kings falling flat in excitement since they were just glorified stat sticks. I would much rather have jewelry with unique and impactful effects on them rather than granting a few max hits and some accuracy. Leagues can and should be a testing ground, one that could have alleviated the issues with, say, the least done region, Kandarin.
Damn, so that was just
of the world map. This region's
that weapon was just a mini flask of fervor. It was just literally just like an AoE weapon combo where it would just AoE like all around you in a 360, huh?
Ceased to offer anything particularly important, since access to the most powerful melee prayer, Piety, was now possible with a relic power, and a better piece of magic damage jewelry was obtainable from the Dagonoth Kings. As a result, Kandarin wasn't done, and if we are to look at Leagues 5 in a vacuum, that's for the better, because it offers bad content, boring bosses, mediocre grinds, and just a dearth of interesting shit. In the future, if they were to spend more time on the region, it could very well become a bastion for magic damage once more. One of the most surprisingly ignored features by Jagex was the elemental weaknesses, a wonderful early game update released in 2024 that made elemental spells more worthwhile on certain creatures weak to their associated element.
That's good. That's a great thing.
Unfortunately, all this really did was give more use for elemental spells in the early game, but elemental spells were already used in the early game. In fact, that's the only time they were ever really used. What was a potentially exciting rollout was muted by Jagex just forgetting about this entire system, which sucked because magic as a combat skill is really unfun. It is defined by a single item that just so happens to be the most expensive and rare magic item in the entire game, and everything else just feels really underwhelming and bad to use. Quite frankly, what I was hoping for was not only a more expansive release of weaknesses, but also new items that really enhance the use of these spells in certain situations. Why not allow us to use the rune crafting skill, for example, one of, if not the most hated skills in the entire game, to imbue certain pieces of jewelry with loads of elemental runes to add elemental damage properties to them? Why not give us the opportunity to create elemental damage builds? Because the most confounding element of Kandarin as a region was that its unique echo item was one for elemental damage. An item that
it's interesting to hear him asking for things that actually came in League 5 or the last league, the League 6
whatsoever anywhere other than the early game, a rare yet poignant miss from Jagex. Leagues also served an alternate purpose for me. While my group Ironman partner and I ventured into leagues without guides, we did so with the knowledge that we want to experience content that we were planning to do in the main game shortly. This was the Colosseum as well as the second raid, the Theater of Blood. One of the most oft-cited reasons for League's success is its ability to give existing players the opportunity to experience content they may be unwilling to or too afraid to try in the main game. And Leagues does allow for this. After
hard mode
50
top high
clears of the Theater of Blood, hard mode included, I feel much more confident with stepping into the encounters in the main game, if only because I have now seen what the mechanics are. And that's An important note, seeing mechanics is of course a positive, but the way one does them is often totally different. One of the rudest awakenings post-leagues was hopping into the Coliseum for the first time and realizing that the waves are a lot harder than leagues made them out to be, and while I am very confident on Soul, wave solving was really not something even truly required in leagues. You could very easily brute force the entire process.
A lot of content is trivialized by the league's builds and items.
Especially with the Last Stand relic giving you a second life every 3 minutes. In this sense, leagues is like a film degree. It is what you make of it, and to learn this content, you truly have to put yourself in the position to learn. That was my experience with the Inferno and my film degree, having accidentally hopped into the pit while readying myself for a day of learning before sleep. I figured, why not stay up for a bit longer and just see what I could do? I ended up clearing it in one try, because I had what I didn't in the main game, the Sunlight Spear, which had the positive effect of being able to one-shot just about every single enemy in the Inferno without needing to do any wave solve at all. Even Zuck, while intense thanks to my weaker range build, was relatively easy because it is at no point representative of the main game. Overall, Leagues was an incredible experience and one that I am honestly
Is that the Tebow tank build people were running in Leagues 5?
Eager to see evolve over the years. If what Jagex said holds to be true, then Leagues ought to be the iterative, growing seasonal game mode that expands with every new release, creating an almost secondary alternative experience to the main game. But that's not to say that it should be permanent. Leagues only works because it's time limited. Actually, time limited. It's flitting, disappearing in an instant, and working in tandem with the main game while being meaningfully different. It is an experience buoyed by the contextual understanding of the functions in the main version. Items, experience rates, just about everything relies on prior knowledge. Leagues only functions as a byproduct of knowing what the real game is like. Pulling a mega rare so effortlessly is only exciting and silly because you know how rare that item really is.
True.
It's almost a secondary moment of joy seeing what takes hundreds of hours to obtain in the main game being grinded in the span of a single night. That is the value. On its own or being permanent, Leagues would lose that feeling outright, and all you are left with is a game that's chewed through in a week and forgotten about forever. But Leagues would never be permanent, right? But what if it was? What if Jagex hired an entire team to develop a secondary architecture that would give players the opportunity to create their own leagues, their own miniature worlds, microcosms of something more, an emptied simulacra? That is Project Xanaris. At its current scope, Jagex seeks to deliver a paid private server experience with various parameters allowing players to adjust experience rates, drops, region restrictions, and so on. It is a gutted, simplistic version of the possibilities in Leagues. They hope to eventually implement some element of player modding to allow for more transformative creations as well. I am unsure.
Guys, 07's in the chat for Project Xanaris. This had way too much potential. This had way too much potential. It was going to be way too good, so they had to cancel it, unfortunately. This was going to be like, imagine the entire community has access to build a RuneScape world, a mode, and then you could join people's server and play on their world. And you could have your own world, and you could build your own Deadman mode. You could build your own league. You could restart the server and have everyone start fresh. You could build your own map, and you guys could do a world PvP in the wilderness. You could build your own like castles in the wilderness and then do like a clan war in the wildy. Crazy. That project would have been massive.
What to make of this development. I am fearful of the effect a permanent sect of private servers can have on the perceived value of reward in the main game. It is far less exciting conceptually to pull a Scythe of Vitter from the Theater of Blood when you have a private server right there where you can spawn it on the floor and use it at your whim. It is less exciting because it makes the main game an experience recontextualized, not a new experience altogether. I believe that MMOs are defined by communal perception. An item is only worth what it is deemed to be worth, and an achievement is similar. Take a look at Skill Cape in RuneScape's modern incarnation, RuneScape 3. in which a host of poor monetization decisions have led the game to have an integrity spiral. Experience is buyable, and as a result, achievements from experience are no longer perceived as anything really. Skill capes aren't just meaningless because they take less time.
Yeah, pay to win ruins time investment achievements because now people no longer can value anything because they don't know if you bought it or you earned it. And that's essentially what Iron Man does. It's just saying you didn't buy any of it. You earned it. And that's why that's why a lot of people play Iron Man now, because that's the point of playing the game, it's the verification that you earned it.
They're meaningless
because they are
indistinguishable from the cash shop. They have become in-game fixtures of a monetization model. But this issue extends to old school RuneScape as well. While it has overall far more integrity as a game, bans have severely damaged that for those not playing the Iron Man game mode. They have brought to question what someone has and hasn't earned, and again, in a world defined by communal perceptions, that has negatively impacted incentives. Personal achievements are personal in personal environments, but are intrinsically not in group environments. What may motivate someone to strive for an infernal cape is as much personal achievement as the clout of having such a prestigious item. The more the prestige is diminished, the less likely someone is to put themselves through the many hours it requires to learn such a piece of content. This does, as much as we may not like it to, heavily connect with Project Xanaris because this selection of private servers is legally and with intent connected to the main game. Not literally, but conceptually. And as we know, games with vibrant modding scenes are defined by those modding scenes. Minecraft, Skyrim, Fallout, and even tangential scenes like that of The Witcher and Dark Souls. These games undeniably have had their lifespans extended thanks to a vibrant modding community, but the main game's prominence in the public conscious diminishes the larger the associated mods are. I am unsure how this impacts an MMO, as this is in many ways uncharted territory. It could become a successful secondary engagement system, a forgotten relic, or an overshadowing Leviathan that shifts most of Jagex's focus on upkeep and monetizing what have become fractured incarnations of old-school RuneScape. That is dependent on the tools provided, of course, which right now are so limited as to not generate much interest at all. What is at stake if that were to happen is a game that is not only singular in its long-form architecture, a modern rarity in the MMO space, but also a hub for everyone. Because what seasonal and limited short-form game modes lack is a permanence in their community's conscious. Leagues, for all of its merits and joy, is forgotten about before it even concludes. That life cycle of what is a separate entity is very much representative of the life cycle of every single patch of every single theme park MMO. To refer to World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV again, these patches or expansions launch with exuberant fanfare and player numbers spike to double or even triple what they were prior to launch, and then plummet down not 2 months afterward.
Bro, look at all these versions of WoW. What the hell? There used to be one version of WoW every 2 years. And then they just started releasing every single version of WoW ever made to try and keep the subscriptions. At some point, bro. This is insanity. There's more than this now, which is just crazy.
With smaller spikes with patch releases. When compared to old school RuneScape's more steady growth over time, the flaws of this are demonstratively clear. Why play during a lull? Why not wait until a new patch? This doesn't apply to RuneScape, but it does apply to leagues. If you aren't playing after the first week, well, I guess better luck next year. Seasonality within gaming as a whole, even in the MMO space, exists in more than just the name. A trend that I would call seasonal, yet inhabits a totally different title, is relaunching. A popular cash-in for less successful MMOs that still have a nostalgic user base reminiscing on the quote-unquote good old days by just relaunching a classic version for a beat or two and letting it die out. This can be seen with games like Arcade, which filtered through a few game resets and relaunches that lasted not more than a few months before petering out into obscurity once more. Seasonal systems can also be seen with games like Black Desert Online that implemented them in a similar fashion to Fresh Start Worlds and RuneScape 3. Two games that have their unique merits but are flawed due to microtransactions.
Dude, Black Desert's combat and movement is so sick.
These seasonal servers exist as catch-up systems with expedited experience rates and item acquisition that, upon completion, put these seasonal characters into the main game, having rushed past what is deemed to be less relevant content. Seasonal structures exist in so many titles at this point that they have become a ubiquitous facet of all live service games. And in the MMO space, old school RuneScape once again managed to blaze a trail like it did in its release in 2013.
Yo, Fruit Snacks, thank you for the sub.
Into its own personal development in 2015. It has inspired other titles, which took what they could, but of course failed to mimic the actual benefit of having a proper game contextualizing the seasonal experience. They may recreate the flitting enjoyment, but will never be able to recreate the permanent home.
All right, good theory-wise video, man. Hell yeah. So basically, he was just talking about the seasonal versions of games versus old school RuneScapes. You know, I feel like old school RuneScape is home because it's the most horizontal, long version MMO game out there right now. And in a way, all other MMOs to me have felt very seasonal or temporary. And WoW, I had to realize that WoW is a temporary game mode and that I shouldn't expect it to be that forever thing that I was wanting it to be. And so I will go back and I will play WoW one day when there's new content to play, but I'm not expecting to stay over there playing World of Warcraft for very long because it's just not what World of Warcraft is. World of Warcraft is not RuneScape. It's not a 300, 400, 500 hour game. It's a 20-day game. You know what I mean? Or days, not hours, by the way. Sorry. I said days. I said hours, but I meant days. Like World of Warcraft Classic is like a 20-day game maximum. So, yeah, that being said, I will end up playing both games, but I don't expect that WoW will ever be like my permanent home. I hope to be able to play both games equally whenever there's new content and play whenever there's hype, because that's the most fun time to play is when there's hype, you know?